You're listening to the Lorna Porca County Hurling Final Special here on WLR. Tomás McCarthy here till 7 o'clock. Well, Ballygunner and Passage will cross hurls in Sunday's showdown at Welsh Park. Will it be a magnificent 7th for the Gunners or a sensational 2nd for Passage? Brian Flannery and Dara Donncha will preview this weekend's senior, intermediate and junior deciders and pick their stars of the season. David Howell from Waterford Landscapes on getting Welsh Park pitch perfect for the big day. Gunners defender Philip Mahoney on life after inter-county hurling. And Passage All-Star Noel Connors on why they will relish the role of underdogs. So it's a county final with a difference. The News and Star Cup will be presented behind closed gates on Sunday in Welsh Park. But it's a familiar pairing as Ballygunner and Passage will face off for the 3rd time in 8 years. The Battle of the Barney will be live on Sunday on WLR with thanks to George Corbett Skoda. And to look ahead to the biggest day in the Donncha hurling calendar, delighted to be joined by former Waterford captain and Munster Express reporter Brian Flannery and GA correspondent with the Dungarvan leader and TG Carter commentator Dara Donncha. And Brian, first of all, your thoughts on a county final with no fans on Sunday?
Yeah, look, I suppose it's sad and disappointing, particularly for the two clubs that are involved in it. I suppose the only consolation is, look, it is live on TG Carter. I know WLR are going to be carrying it as well. So, look, there is great access, I suppose, for those who won't have the magic 40th ticket or whatever. So, it's just I suppose a very strange year. It's a year that'll I suppose be remembered for all sorts of things. And having said that, whichever side, whether it's a famous Passage upset or whether it's a 7th in a row for Ballygunner, they won't mind too much come 3:30 on Sunday. So it is. I think it's great that we've got to the stage where we've all matches run off, and thankfully we've had no interruptions in the Waterford Senior Championship. A lot of counties around the country haven't had as clear run as we've had it here in Waterford. So it's probably a bit of relief, and it is brilliant to at a stage where we're at county final stage this weekend at all the different grades. And I suppose the Blue Ribbon event is the Senior Championship final, and two near neighbours, two rivals, and I'm certainly looking forward to it.
Yeah, Dara, we've seen new and novel ways for GA supporters to watch games over the past couple of weeks. Is it sad in a way that long-serving supporters and parents as well will miss out on seeing these county finals over the weekend?
Of course it is. Like, I mean, you had just to show how fast the situation is. County minor final, which was on last Wednesday week in Fairfield, nobody allowed into it. The match is streamed, and 50 people going to a room to watch it on TV. Like, how can that be deemed safer than 50 people in the stands that can cater for 3,200 people? It doesn't make sense. But so look, there's no point giving out about it. We just have to go along with it. But like you said, yes, novel, and it's the first time I've seen the scaffold at a GA match that there wasn't a television crew on top of the Clashmore supporters' ingenuity, I have to say, last Sunday evening. But Tomas, and you were there and I was there, when it came to the penalties, I mean, it was terrific. It was terrific for us as neutrals. But can you imagine what that would have been like if you had a stand full of people there watching those penalties? God, it would have been absolutely brilliant. Anyway, look, that's what it is. It is as it is, as the politicians say.
Yeah, we'll come on to the penalties a little bit later. We'll look ahead to the intermediate final, Dara. But Brian, Ballygunner Passage, it brings back up memories of 2013. Have you ever seen a more dramatic ending to a county final than what happened 7 years ago?
I think I've rarely seen such a dramatic ending to any sport event. I think Ballygunner were 7 points up with 7 minutes to go and ended up losing by 3. You had a 10-point turnaround. As the saying goes, in front of us, the News and Star Cup, the black and red ribbons were already being adorned onto the cup. It was quite a dramatic finish, and I suppose look for Passage to win the way they did. That's a famous day in their history, and I suppose the other side of the coin, it's probably been a huge motivating factor for Ballygunner. It's been like, remember the Alamo or remember 2013 for Ballygunner, and if there was any, I suppose, if you're worried about complacency, I suppose the memory and the hurt in relation to losing the final and the way I suppose they lost it to Passage on that day, I'm sure that will be foremost in their mind again this Sunday. I think when you look at the 2016 final, there was a fair dollop of revenge in, I don't know, was it 420 to 112 and what the score was, something like that. But, you know, it is, I suppose, no matter what happens this Sunday, you know, that's a day that'll always be special, I'm sure, in Passage hearts and Passage supporters. And it's something, you know, irrespective of how Sunday's game go, they'll always certainly have that. But I'm sure they're looking forward to it and hoping to add a second title to that famous victory.
Dara, would you agree with Brian that 2013 defeat is still in the back of Ballygunner minds heading into Sunday?
Totally. The remind you of Kilkenny in a lot of ways. The really successful teams, you beat them once and they want to beat you for the next 40 years, like that you had the audacity to beat them. And I suppose the way Passage caught them, really, that's my memory of that match, the amount of people who had gone home.
Right.
I think there was a few on the Dunmore Road by the time of the final whistle, right?
Some prominent county board officials, and we leave it at that. I'm not going to divulge who they were.
Go on, name names, McDara, go on.
I can tell you exactly. I can tell you. Basically, yeah, they bet them in the 2016 final and bet them well, and they've beaten them. But isn't it gas? I think towards yourself the road at Tomas, Passage have come nearest to Ballygunner this year. They were only beaten by 11 points in the group game, you know.
Yeah.
And no, that 2013, as Brian says, there'll be no complacency in that Ballygunner camp, none whatsoever.
Brian, when we were previewing the championship, and I suppose we're all guilty here, Passage weren't on any of our shortlists at the beginning of the season. They were 20-1 shots. What impressed you about the performance against Mount Sion last Sunday?
Well, I think if you look at Passage and all through the year, I think in the group side of it, they won the game they needed against Tallow. But the quarter final probably against Rowan Moore was the day where they had to fight hard. It was a scrappy game in many ways, but they did what they had to do, and they won that game in as I said, probably a low score and not a very attractive game. But the last day against Mount Sion, they shot 17 points in the first half, 26 points overall. So it shows they can win. They can win a high scoring game as well. So they've come through, I suppose, with great credit. And if this was any sort of normal circumstances or any other probably team that'd be playing a county final, you'd be saying, God, their Passage are looking well going into the final. It's just, I suppose, the strength and depth in the team that they're playing, is the reason that they're so far outsiders. It's not that they haven't impressed themselves. It's just the strength and dominance of the opposition, really. But I think they've done absolutely brilliant. And some of the points they scored the last day against Mount Sion were fabulous. You know, Owen Connors, Killian Fitzgerald, Young Cummins. I mean, they scored brilliant points from distance and under pressure as well. I mean, that's fantastic. And, you know, whatever Michael Walsh has done with him, he certainly instilled, a lot of steel. You know, they fight to the end, go to the final whistle. And I think nobody can doubt their deserving of their appearance in the county final. But it's still a big ask, and that's the reality.
Dara, we saw last Sunday against Mount Sion, Passage going out with 7 defenders. Jason Roach was a spare man, and as Brian mentions, they struck some great long distance points. Killian Fitzgerald, Mikey Cummins, Owen Connors. Will they use a similar template now for Ballygunner this time around?
Well, they probably will. Ballygunner do themselves so effectively, and maybe Les Morton have tried it last Saturday evening. But in addition to the list, Brian gave it, Liam Flynn was outstanding last day, and he's a big, strong man. He's very impressive in the air. But look, Barry Coxon would love to see Liam Flynn going in, kind of come into my parlours as a spider to the fly job. And if Liam Flynn is held, he was 5 points he scored on.
5 points from play.
A number of other scores came off him. So if he's held, then that's a big threat gone from Passage. Now, be interesting to see how much of a role Tommy Connors plays here. Tommy, I think, was away and he was self-isolating, so he was unavailable for them for some games until last Sunday. He came on to 10 to go, and Tommy's a fine hurler. I somehow imagine he'll play more than 10 minutes on Sunday, Team in transition, as I said, I didn't think it'd get remotely this far. They're trying a couple of new lads, but they've gelled in. Like Eddie Lynch is still a good, solid goalkeeper. Noel Connors is playing very well. I thought we saw good flashes of the old Noel Connors last Sunday, locking guys down and hurrying them and hassling them, which he did so brilliantly for years. And I still don't think he'll be on Eddie Hutchinson, because I don't think he'll have the pace for Eddie Hutchinson. Passage are not a bad team. Now, somebody said to me, it might have been you, I don't think it was, he's only for Ballygunner, we'd have a great championship.
Well, Passage are certainly there on merit, McDara, and like you mentioned, Tommy Connors there could play a role. Could John Whitty be on from the start after the impact he made last Sunday?
He could. And he did what's rare. He scored a point to the blood sub, his last act to the blood sub, and then his first act to the real sub was another point. So I don't know, it may be not unique in the annals of the GA, but to be rare. Yeah, again, and it's good for them to have these options. That's two extra options maybe that they mightn't have had for a quarter-final. But John has done the business before when he has come on, or he's worked a few scores as well. So I wouldn't be surprised. Now, look, they'll probably stay loyal to the team that started last day, but it's good to have these options on the bench, and I'd say you'll see them being used maybe earlier than was the case up to this.
Absolutely. Brian, what about Desi Hutchinson? I presume Callum O'Neill will be the man tasked to mark him this time around. Like, he's 6-19 for the season, 2-8 from play the last day. Has he kind of gone up another level since 2019?
Look, I suppose he's been one of the players of the championship, and certainly in the championship so far, he's been unmarkable, and I think he fits the Ballygunner system very well. They work very hard to create that space in the full forward line, and a lot of his scores. I mean, his movement is brilliant. His first touch. I mean, there's very few have that in their armoury like Desi Hutchinson has, but the quality of the ball that's coming in, and particularly if you look at the game the last day against Lismore, David Prendergast was left on an island with Desi Hutchinson, and that's an island no cornerback wants to be on, to be honest with you, and just that quality of ball. If that happens Sunday, Desi Hutchinson will put up another big score again. It has to be the pressure out the field as much as the cover in the full back line.
Are Passage better set up maybe than other teams, Brian, because they have been using this system for the past 3 matches? Yeah,
I think that may be the case, in that they've, particularly against Rowan Moore, they played with an extra player in defence. They played with an extra player the last day. You kind of double teamed Austin Gleeson the last day. So this, so they're used to playing that sort of a tactic. And look, Ballygunner always play, typically with Philip Manny as an extra defender or free defender. So they're naturally going to have somebody in that area. But it's still very difficult. Like, there's a lot of, even with an extra defender, like there's a lot of area to cover. And if the quality of ball is, as we've seen so far in the championship from Ballygunner, it's still going to be a huge task for whether it is Callum O'Neill or Noel Connors or anybody else who's going to be trying to tag Desi Hutchinson. It's still a big task and a huge ask, really, in a big game, pressurised arena like this.
McDara,
will it be seventh heaven for the Gunners come around 3:30 on Sunday afternoon?
It's hard to see anything else, but then we thought the same thing in 2013. So that's the beauty of sport. You never know what's going to happen, but it's very hard to go against them, really, because they're a driven team, and I think they know there's no Munster Club Championship or Ireland Club Championship. This is their holy grail this year, next Sunday. Yeah, you'd have to go with Ballygunner. Interesting to see, will might Passage try something slightly different outside the box. Now, they've only had a week, but I'm sure they knew that Ballygunner were there and they would have played them before. So the interesting to see, will Michael Welch come up with something, but he's a wily operator, and then Pat Kearney's in the backroom team as well. Might they consider, for example, the unorthodox thing of having a forward mark back, in that Philip Mahoney does an awful lot of the setting up for Ballygunner? Would they put somebody on Philip Mahoney to stop him being so creative in the backline? Sacrifice a forward to negate his influence in setting up a lot of these counter-attacks with Ballygunner. But look, you might stop one Ballygunner player, another fellow come beside him and he's just as good. And if there's a fellow in the field who's not producing it, look at the talent they have on the line as well. It's incredible. So, yeah, for me, it has to be Ballygunner,
Brian, you stated in this studio at the start of the championship that Ballygunner were 10 points better than everybody else in Waterford. Are you sticking to that prediction?
Well, look, I think so far I've been proven right.
Yeah,
I think
certainly have.
The nearest anybody has got to him is Passage with 11 points. Look, I think from Stephen O'Keefe to Peter Hogan and Desi Hutchinson in the full forward line, you have inter-county players and you have inter-county quality players, and Dara alluded to it there, but look at the substitutes they had the last day. Barry O'Sullivan, Conor Power, Eddie Hayden, JJ Hutchinson. Those 4 players would be on any other senior team in Waterford. Never mind when you look down the list of substitutes. I think in the 30s they have Cormac Power listed and Tom Gallagher. Again, 2 young players that I'm not sure I know of any senior team that wouldn't have them in their starting lineup. You just can't, I don't think there's any team, Passage or any other club in Waterford, can match that sort of talent. And Ballygunner they're one of the best teams in Munster. it's very hard to see a scenario where, given the backup and the panel that they have, how they, that they wouldn't come through and win on Sunday and win a 7th title. And
I've asked you both to pick out your 3 stars of the Senior Hurling Championship so far. Dara, we'll start off with yourself. Who is your top 3?
You'd have to go with Morris. Morris Shanahan, outstanding against Four Mile the first game, 217 total. Very effective in the second game against Dungarvan. Didn't score as much, but set up a lot of and showed his playmaking qualities as well. So Morris will be number 1. You'd have to go with Jesse. Number 2. Now maybe slightly outside it for me. Paddy Levy. Very impressed by Paddy Levy this year with Ballygunner. Relative new name on the block, but here he is as a kind of almost a regular now and keeping the likes of Harley Barnes on the bench and everything else. So they'd be my 3.
Very interesting. Before we come to yourself, Brian, I've also picked out Morris Shanahan and Desi Hutchinson. I've also going to throw in Callum O'Neill. He's picked up Tommy Ryan, Desi Hutchinson, Billy Nolan and Austin Gleeson. So far he's probably been the standout player for Passage. Who is your top 3?
Yeah, well, look, I think if you're writing the story of the 2020 Senior Hurling Championship, I think Morris Shanahan and Desi Hutchinson are certainly going to be in any top 3 in relation to performances. They have been standout players, but I think another player, and again, maybe I'll be accused of being biased, but that won't be for the first time. I mean, I think Austin Gleeson and some of the scores he's contributed in the championship has really lit up the Waterford Senior Hurling Championship, and it is a pity we don't have attendances at some of these games. Thankfully, some of those great scores. Again, he was outstanding the last day in the second half. 4 points from play made a huge difference. I think he scored 6 against Flannery. I think throughout the championship, Austin Gleeson is another player. It's hard to look past his contribution, and I suppose it would be unfair not to mention maybe Owen Connors, Killian Fitzgerald as well. I mean, they have been huge impact and a huge reason that Passage are in Sunday's final. 2 players that are they're around a while now and were part of that victory in 2013, but very key to Passage's progress to Sunday's final.
Martin Blondie O'Neill, I suppose, would be in a shake-up.
Yeah. Again, coming back, having played senior championship in Waterford for 5 years, particularly in the quarter-final, give an absolutely outstanding display against De La Salle, and again, which was, I suppose, a surprise result at the time. So, a lot of great performances, and I suppose not even through the senior. I think one of the features of this year's championship is a lot of clubs' top players and their top intercounty players have come to the fore. And sometimes I think when the club championship is played at the end of the year, you have players coming back maybe a little bit broken from an intercounty season, and clubs don't often maybe get the best out of them. But this is an extraordinary year, and I think in some ways with the club going first, it's really given a boost to the championship.
Dara, let's turn to the battle of the Ballyduffs. Ballyduff Lower versus Ballyduff Upper in intermediate decider, 5 o'clock Sunday evening in Fairfield. You mentioned those penalties earlier. Ballyduff beat Clashmore 4-3 on penalties after they finished level, 2-25 apiece after extra time. Real rider over stuff by Andrew Casey, converting 2 spot pucks, if you like. In your view, Dara, was it the fairest way to decide the match in the end?
Sure, look, it's not, obviously isn't. In any sport it's not, but oh God, it's for the neutral viewer, or for if you look at that when it was being streamed, it's fantastic. That's if you weren't from Clashmore or from Ballyduff. But it's dramatic, it's cruel, it's awful, but it's great. It's great TV, and I'll tell you one thing: if it happened that Passage Ballygunner went to penalties on Sunday on TG4, you'd have a lot of people watching it. So look, it's there. It's the year it is. We have to accept these things. Nobody had matches finishing on penalties. Very, very hard on Clashmore, who were winning by 3 points after 81 minutes, and then the last touch of the ball, Andrew Casey gets the touch to bring it to the penalties, and then poor old Mark McGrath, who made 3 great saves and actually got his hurley to the final shot. Was it
Andrew Casey?
Andrew's shot. He got his hurley to it, but he just couldn't keep it out. So you feel desperately sorry for them, and it's very, very hard on Clashmore, who really. I never saw a team to improve like them. I saw them the first game against on Ryan, and they were well beaten the same evening, but they improved immeasurably. And the highlight for me really is to see Ty Dworka back to his regal best, and regal is the word because he's one of the most elegant hurlers I've seen in a long time. Brian O'Halloran also played tremendous stuff. But look at credit to Ballyduff. They stayed with it. The Caseys were excellent. I haven't seen Ballyduff lower, so I'm at a disadvantage there. I'm told that Brian might know this, that Caleb Lyons is capable of winning a match on his own, and the backup is there as well. You'd fancy. I could sit on the fence, Tomas, and say I think Ballyduff will win it. I think I'll go with upper, but anything will happen.
Yeah, Brian, there was plenty of drama in Welsh Park as well. Ballyduff lower squeezed past Dunhill 218 to 120. Was Caleb Lyons the difference between the two teams in the end?
Yeah, it probably was in the end, but again, another cracking game, and again, we're talking about, I know it was carried online and that, but, it's a pity there wasn't a bigger crowd there, two neighbouring parishes. But yeah, like it looked at, this new Dunhill team with assist from the Bonmahan players, looked as if they were going to hold on and win, and late penalty, again, Callum Lyons stepped up, stuck it, and scored two absolutely brilliant points straight after that. Fantastic scores to effectively win the game. And I know Dunhill came back and brought it back to a point, but probably the slightly better team on the day. And again, it's a feature of Ballyduff Lowers, I suppose, year in that they've won close games. I think that could be maybe the third game they've won by a point. They've really been on the edge. It's a great sign of a team. Ronan Dunphy, very good. Cormac Dunphy. As I said, it is very much a team based on families, and it's great to see that. Not a huge parish in the east, but Sundays it's their big opportunity as well. I suppose in an overall sense, you're looking at Ballyduff Upper, I suppose, have that senior experience that may, if it does come down tight again, that may just be the difference. And I imagine Ballyduff Upper are probably the slight favourites going into this. But certainly, I've mentioned a couple of times the quality of some of the individual performances, and if you were talking about hurlers of the year and we were talking about the three best in the senior championship, I think Caleb Lyons certainly would be an honourable mention in any company. And he's a player that I remember him playing minor. I think his father was the manager of that particular Waterford minor team, and he's come on tons and tons since, and really looking forward to, I suppose, watching him again, I suppose, for Ballyduff, but more importantly, I suppose, later on in the year for Waterford. I think he'll be a key player for Liam Cahill going forward. Absolutely.
There were two amazing points at the end, but I was just watching it back on the stream this morning, and I think anyone should really check them out. They were real game changers for Ballyduff Lower. There's also a big weekend in terms of the junior finals as well. We have the Junior B final this evening, Clonea versus Ballyduff Upper, 7 o'clock in Fairfield. We also have the Junior C final, also in Fairfield, Saturday at 2 o'clock, Tramore versus Kilgobnet in that one. McDara, looking at the Junior A final, Saturday evening, 6 o'clock in Fairfield, Colligan versus Tramore. Like last weekend, Colligan won a first Western Junior since 1984. Can they add a county title to that over the weekend?
Well, interestingly, the only time Tramore ever won the county final was back in 82. And who did they beat in the final? Colligan. No, there's nobody still playing from Colligan, but there are a number of sons of fathers who were playing that time involved with Colligan. And I saw Colligan their first game, just like Cashmore. They were playing against Ryan bet them, caught them on the hop the same day. Really, they've improved leaps and bounds since then. They've a nicely balanced team now. PJ Coffey, I'm hearing, won't be starting, and he's a big loss to them because he's very steady in that half back line. But Dan Booth is and Liam Burnsford very strong in that half back line. Goalkeeper, very very secure goalkeeper. Midfield, I really like their midfield. Mark Flynn and Colin Dunford. We all know what Colin can do, and Colin is kind of putting a bit more variety into his game. There was a time when Colin, every time he got the ball, he just soloed with the ball and tried to make the space. And he's been a bit more economical with it now, letting it go at times. And, making these runs, maybe not so frequently, but maybe with greater effect. And then up front, like Reece Stringer, Ross Brown and John Wall, very effective. And, of course, the Michael Ryan on the sideline, very crafty man, who's often underrated. I don't know a hell of a lot about Tramore. I know they were in the final 2 years ago against Ballymena. Ballymena were cruising. Tramore came back strongly. Now, that experience will stand to them. 4 or 5 lads on the Tramore team now. They have those two relatives up front, Brendan Hogan in the half-back line. They have a strong half-back line. So, again, it could be very interesting. The fact that it's in Fairfield, I like the balance of this Colligan outfit. I think Colligan just might squeeze it. We have to give special mention to Gavin Whelan, who would be commentating on it if he wasn't playing it.
Let's not give him too much praise now, McDara.
Well, he's done a lot now, but I don't think even Gavin could play and commentate at the same time.
No. Brian, just touching on Tramore, did a hard-fought battle against Rowan Moore, came through after extra time. Who will be their big men for this one on Saturday?
I think this year, if you look at they beat Mount Sion in the semi-final in the East and Rowan Moore the final. Now, both clubs, I suppose, both Mount Sion and Rowan Moore, because of the structure of the championship this year, would have actually been quite strong at junior level, wouldn't have used a lot of players at senior level. So, they were notable victories, and I think, again, they had to ground out in extra time the last day against Rowan Moore. There is, I suppose, a bit of teak toughness in this particular Tramore side. I think they'll battle to the very end, and I think they could cause an upset.
Now you're hurling. Lorna Porca with Tomás McCarthy on WLR.